Everyone welcome Valerie Tutson, graduate from Brown University with a master's degree in theater arts and a degree in a self-designed major, storytelling as a communications art. Valerie has been telling stories in schools, churches, libraries, festivals, and conferences since 1991. She draws her stories from around the world with an emphasis on African traditions. Her repertoire includes stories and songs she learned in her travels to South Africa, her experiences in West Africa, stories from African-American history. In addition, she is gaining quite a reputation for her exciting retelling of age-old Bible stories. She not only delights listeners with her tale-telling, she also teaches workshops and classes to students of all ages and hosts Cultural Tapestry, an award-winning show for Cox 3, celebrating the diverse cultures around us. Valerie has most recently served as the co-director of the National Black Storytelling Festival in Providence, Rhode Island.
All right. The Black Festival's November. The national festival's in November. But actually, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a little old. So it's been a while since we've hosted the national, but we do host an area one every January, a Black festival called the Funda Festival. So it's really nice to be here. And we have a few things, and thank you for sharing that, and thanks for coming here on this sunny day to hang out. And I know my understanding is we have a few things that we want to do. One is, you know, for me to share little stories, but also for us to find ways that we can dig into our own stories, right? Because your whole theme this week is our story, your story, my story, PC story, whatever it is that you're going to be exploring about who it is that you are and how it is you can share your story. So even though we're kind of a small group, I think the process that we get to go through should be fun. And it will also give you some ideas maybe to help others as you go through some of the other activities that you're going to do all week long. So as we get started, I like to begin with a song. I usually always begin with a song. And the song that I think I would like us to sing today is a song that comes from Malawi. And it's a greeting song. Do you guys know where Malawi is? Mm-hmm. You do? Why is that? Somebody the other day said, that's where Madonna adopted her children from. I was like, yeah, that's true. Yeah, but I can show you. You know exactly where it is on the continent? Would you like to see? Because I think I have my map. I do. Oops. This is a, isn't that fun? Yeah, so Malawi is over here, next to Mozambique and Zambia and Zimbabwe. Right over here. So I've got a good friend who comes from Malawi, and you actually in California, I don't know if you ever ran into him. His name is Masanko Banda. And for a long time, he spent part of his life in the Oakland area, you know, half the year in Oakland and half the year in Malawi. And he just got married to his childhood sweetheart back in Malawi. So now he's, you know, switched the thinking, meaning half the year in Malawi and part of the year here in the States, which is cool. But he is also a storyteller and a peacemaker and an all-around amazing guy named Masanko, and he taught me this song, and I want to share it with you. It goes like this. Dakuona, 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 moni. Pretty simple. Okay, and then we just repeat it. So the words are dakuona. Try it. Dakuona, and we say that 3 times. Dakuona, dakuona. Then the last word, moni. Moni, kind of like money, but it's moni. All right? And so we move our hands. So we move from our eyes, and then we go to our heart. Then we go in front, and then we clap on moni. And that's so that when we're singing, our whole body is helping us say, I see you with my eyes. I see you with my heart. I see you in front of me. And I greet you with respect. That's what the song means. And I just love that, you know, everywhere I go. In fact, the way I learned it really is in the oral tradition. Masanko taught it to me and a bunch of people, and he's like, oh, yeah, sing it. I said, no, you're going to have to sing it in my cell phone, because otherwise I'm not going to remember how to sing it. So that's an interesting way that technology and the oral tradition kind of mixed up, right? So Masanko sang it on my cell phone so that I could learn the song, so that I could share it in different places. But I said, I love this because if we could really walk around saying and thinking, I see you and I greet you with respect, no matter who it is you are, no matter what packaging you come in, I believe we could change the world. So that's why I teach people this song. Y'all ready? Okay, here we go. Daku-o-na, 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 moni. Daku-o-na, 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 moni. Very good. Now you've practiced it. You got it. Yeah. But you're singing to me, which is nice, but I'm not the only one here. So go ahead and turn to somebody near you. Make eye contact with somebody else in our circle, and we're going to sing to our people near us, okay? Here we go. Daku-o-na, 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 mo. Turn to somebody else. Daku-o-na, daku-o-na, daku-o-na. Now look across the circle, find another. Daku-o-na, 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 mo. Back to me. Daku-o-na, 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 mo-ni. Whoa, nice, right? Doesn't that feel good and a little bit strange and wonderful all at the same time? For me, singing and storytelling are kind of mixed up together. And as I've been exploring storytelling in the African tradition and African American tradition, I know that that is kind of the case, you know, that songs and stories go hand in hand. Songs help us, you know, loosen up, everybody gets to participate in it, and it involves our whole body, right? So it allows us to kind of get out of our heads. So that's one of the reasons that I love to incorporate music and singing in the stories that I tell. Now, I'm going to just tell you a little bit about how I got into storytelling, a bit of my story. When I was a senior in high school, I lived in this small town called New Milford, Connecticut. Anybody ever heard of New Milford, Connecticut? Really?
I live in Stanford.
Stop it! Okay, so not Milford, real close to there, but New Milford up near Danbury is where I grew up. Exactly, and went to New Milford High School. Lived there my whole life until I graduated from New Milford High School. And my senior year, there was a storyteller who came to perform at New Milford High School. Now, he did not come to perform for the high school students because, you know, storytelling is for little kids. But my mother had the opportunity to meet him. See, my mom used to sing in the church choir, and every Wednesday night they would go out drinking after they finished their choir rehearsal. And it just so happened that this visiting storyteller by the name of David Holt happened to be friends with one of the choir members, and so she brought him to the bar where they all went to hang out and drink and whatever it was that they were doing. So the next morning, my mother said, "Val, come on up. Come on, join us. Come, are you joining us? Come on in." Oh, taking a picture. Okay. So the next morning, my mom said, "Val, there's going to be a storyteller at the high school, and you should go see him. His name is David Holt, and he plays the banjo and the paper bag and the spoons, and you should go see this guy." And I thought, why in the world do I want to go see some guy who plays the banjo and the paper bag and the spoons? That just didn't, I mean, it sounded a little bit interesting. She said, he's going to be telling stories for all the little kids. They're bringing them up. I thought, oh, brother, bringing up all the second and third graders in New Milford up to the high school to see this storyteller. Well, they did bus about 7 busloads of second and third graders up to the high school at the end of the day. And it was during my band class. But since I was a senior, I was going to be marching to Pomp and Circumstance instead of playing Pomp and Circumstance. So I decided that maybe I could just skip my class and go check out this Storyteller. So I followed all those little second and third graders into the auditorium in the high school. They all sat down and couldn't quite reach the floor, you know, with their feet squeaking back and forth. And I stood way in the back, you know, because I was a high school senior and those were 7-year-olds. And so there you have it. And I waited, and pretty soon the lights came down a little bit, and then they came up again just to kind of give us attention there on the stage, and out walked this ordinary looking white guy who was bald, but he had a hat kind of put back on the back of his head, and he had this funny thing around his neck, which I didn't recognize initially, but I learned later it was a harmonica, and I know because he played it. He was carrying a banjo, and there was a microphone stand right in the middle of the stage, and he just walked up to that microphone, and he opened up his mouth, and he let out a hog call. I had never heard a hog call before, but his hands were up there, he made some noise, and then pretty soon he was on that harmonica, and then he was taking us on a journey of these dogs chasing hogs through the mountains of Appalachia. And then we got on the back of a motorcycle, and we were traveling around with him on these back roads. And then he was telling us about this family, 2 of them, you know, the sisters, and one lived high up the mountain, one lived down below the mountain, and nobody had any cell phones back then. They didn't even have a landline telephone. I don't know if you know anything about that, but back in those days, the only way they could communicate besides yelling was to have a tin can up here and a wire and a tin can at the house down below. And I tell you, when he had us clap, I was clapping. When he had us hog call, I was hog calling. Whatever he said do, I was doing, having a good time. And that 45, 50, 60 minutes flew by. When the storytelling was over and all those 7-year-olds left, I actually went up to the stage and introduced myself to the storyteller. And there was another woman there who knew him. And so the 3 of us had this wonderful conversation. It was so cool to learn that he had learned many of his stories and songs hanging out with old folks up on their porches in Appalachia. And that's how he learned the things that he was sharing with us. And, you know, I talked to him for a long time. And when I got home later that day, my mother asked me if I saw the storyteller. And I said, yeah. She said, well, how was it? I said, it was okay. Because, you know, I was a senior in high school. But my mom also knew that I was on my way to Providence to come to Brown University. Now, she said, Val, they have this major called semiotics. I said, what is semiotics? She said, well, I don't really know, but it seems to have something to do with stories and deconstructing stories and narrative and film, or, you know, all different things. I didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, didn't really make a whole lot of sense to her, but off I came up here to Brown University, and I walked in to the Brown University bookstore my first week of classes with my brand new freshman friends who I didn't know 3 days living on the same hall. And we walk in, and there were 3 professional storytellers in the Brown University bookstore. Len Cabral, Bill Harley, and Marilyn Murphy Mearden. So I made my brand new friends sit right down on the floor so that we could listen to them tell stories. And it was great. I don't know how you pick your classes, but you know, Brown, I don't know what the deal is now, but back then you didn't have any requirements. So you could take really whatever you wanted to take. And my way of choosing the classes I wanted to take was to wander through the bookstore and check out the books you had to read for class. Because, you know, if you got to be reading all this stuff, it might as well be interesting. So I ran across books for this course that was called Afro-American Studies 101A Voices from Beneath the Veil. Afro-American Folk Traditions and the Aesthetics of Change from 1619 to 1983. So the title was long and scary, but the books looked awesome. And the course was taught by this man whose name was George Houston Bass. Some of you will remember George, perhaps. He was one of the founders of what's now Rights and Reason Theater at Brown University. And George had been the personal secretary to Langston Hughes. Now, I didn't know that until I got into class. And when I got into class, George let us know that he was the personal secretary to Langston Hughes and the executor of Langston Hughes' estate. Do you know who Langston Hughes is? African-American poet. So as executor of Langston Hughes' estate, George had his ashes in a canister underneath a mask that he had brought back from India. And every once in a while, well, somewhere during our class, and certainly towards the end, when we would bring our chairs into a situation like this, George would leave a seat open, and he would place Langston in our midst so that we understood that this exploration of our culture through stories was something that had been done before us and something that was a part of us and something that would continue on after he's gone, we're gone. The stories continue. So that was kind of cool, but a lot of times George talked in language that I didn't understand because George had been a math major. Math and I never really got along very well, so he liked to think in equations, and sometimes in his theoretical thinking, he would draw stuff on the board and he was all bleh. And one day George had drawn all this stuff up on the board and he looked at the class and he said, "Okay, everybody know what I'm talking about?" And nobody raised a hand. Thank God I was not the only one who didn't have an idea what in the world George was talking about. So George came around and he sat down and he said, "Okay, let me tell you a story." And this is the story he told. It was a beautiful day. Kind of like last week. Let's not say today. Today's a little chilly. But you remember last week when it got so warm and you just wanted to kick off your shoes and pull off your long sleeves and feel that sunshine on your skin? Well, that's the kind of day it was. And old Sis Goose decided that she wanted to go swimming. Well, you know, she lived in the pond anyway, but this was going to be a really nice day. So she was out there in the middle of the pond, and she had her eyes closed, and her head was back, and she was just enjoying the feel of the sunshine on her feathers. Woo-hoo! When all of a sudden she heard something. And she turned and she looked, and she saw this nose coming out of the bushes. And attached to the nose was a face, and the face belonged to Brer Fox. "Brer Fox, how you doing?" Brer Fox said, "I was doing fine until I saw you and your goose tail up in that pond. You need to get up out of that pond." And she said, but why, Brer Fox? It's a nice day. I'm enjoying myself." He said, "Because this here pond belongs to foxes. You need to get up out of there." Well, Sis Goose looked around. Excuse me, and she said, "Well, I don't see a sign around here that says this here pond belongs to foxes." And Brer Fox said, "Doesn't need to be a sign, Sis Goose. That's the way it's always been. That's the way it is right now, and that's the way it's going to stay. So you need to get up out of that pond." Well, when Sis Goose heard that, she did not think that was fair at all. And she looked at Brer Fox and she said, "Brer Fox, that is not fair. That is not just at all." He said, "Doesn't matter." She said, "No. That is so unjust. I think we should take it to court." And as soon as she said that, Brer Fox got a big old smile on his face. "You want to take it to court?" She said, "Yes, I do." He said, "Good. I'll see you at the courthouse tomorrow." So the next day, Sis Goose got all dressed up. she'd never been to court before, and this is an old story, so you know the fashion back then was you wore a nice little skirt and a little matching jacket, and then she had some shoes that matched the color of the outfit, and then she had some gloves and a little hat and a matching purse. She looked good. And she went on down there to the courthouse, and she was trying to open up the door, but it was hard, you know, for a little old goose, and so somebody came to help her, and that somebody was a fox. And she said, thank you. And then she went on into the information desk to find out where her hearing was going to be. And the one giving out the information was a fox. And she went on down the hall where they told her her hearing was to be, and standing on both sides, you know, either side of the door were the guards, and they were foxes. And she went on in and she sat down, and I never remember the order of how this works, but the bailiff came out, and the bailiff was a fox, and well, the lawyers came in and they were foxes, and the jury came in and they were foxes, and then the judge came, and the judge was a fox too. And as Professor George Houston Bass said, you can be sure that those foxes cooked their goose that day. And then he said, long as there's nothing but foxes in the courthouse, there will never be much justice for them there geese. And all of a sudden, whatever point he was trying to make through his applications and his equations and his theory crystallized in the power of the telling of that story and the understanding of the story and the message of that story. That was, oops, can I tell you? I'm going to have my 25th college reunion in May, and I still remember that story and that impact on my life. I was like, this storytelling is pretty powerful. I want to find out more about this storytelling. That's when I decided to undertake this exploration of storytelling for my degree, storytelling as a communications art, looking at it as a teaching tool, looking at it as a way that it helps us form community. I can't really say at that time I was really looking at it in that way. In my work since then, I get it as a way for us to form and develop and nurture community. The last piece I want to tell you about that story is that when I graduated from Brown, it was 1987. You weren't born, were you? It's all right. It's okay. But in 1987, do you know what was happening in South Africa at that time? Apartheid. Apartheid. Mandela was in prison. And I had become very good friends with a black storyteller from South Africa who was doing work at Brandeis. And she invited me to come to South Africa. And so I said, okay. My parents were not excited about this at all, the idea that I was going to South Africa. But for me, I desperately wanted to go. See, my mom was white and my dad black. And when they got married in 1963, they got married before the March on Washington. And when they got married, interracial marriage was illegal in 17 of our states. So I was conscious of the fact that I'm a product of the 50s, 60s civil rights movement. But I grew up in my small town. You know, there weren't a lot of black people. You know, it was all fine just to kind of be there. But I had this desire to go and see what South Africa was like, you know. Maybe it was sort of like how my parents grew up. So off I went, and a lot of things happened. I got there on Valentine's Day in 1988, and a state of emergency went into effect, which meant that when I arrived there, all the people that I had been told to go and meet went into hiding. So I couldn't find any of them. But I went to a rally at the University of Cape Town, and it was so exciting because, you know, young people on college campuses, that's where the energy is, right? That's where the fists are raised and the voices are screamed and the change starts rippling out, was my experience. So here I was at this University of Cape Town, being overwhelmed by listening to the speakers and hearing the songs. And at one point I just had to slip away. And I was standing where I could look out over the Indian Ocean, beautiful. And behind me was what they call Table Mountain in Cape Town. And they call it Table Mountain because it's flat on the top and the clouds roll off, and when they come down, it looks like a tablecloth. It's stunning. So I was taking a breather, and this guy followed me, and he looked kind of like me in terms of skin color. And he started speaking to me in Afrikaans, which let me know that he must have been a quote-unquote Cape-colored, right? A mixed race, multi-generational person, so they spoke Afrikaans. Well, I don't speak Afrikaans. So I told him that in English, and he said, "Oh, you speak English, and not only that, you're American," because in those days, Americans did not go to South Africa. We were boycotting South Africa. He said, "And you're Black American. You have one of the greatest poets in the whole world comes from your people." And I said, "Who?" He said, "Langston Hughes. Do you know him?" I said, "Oh my God, do I know Langston? Let me tell you how I know Langston." And I told him all about George, everything that I just told you guys about how George would bring Langston and sit him in the circle, you know, and that he made us all godchildren of Langston Hughes and gave us a piece of his ashes and blah, 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 blah. And then we started reciting Langston Hughes poetry back and forth, just sharing. It was amazing. And then after we finished all that, I said, "Oh, and I have to tell you a story that my professor told me." And I told him the story of Old Sis Goose. And when I finished telling the story, we looked over towards the Parliament building, you know, where all the laws are made, where at that time, Black Africans had no voice, no vote, no presence, really. Colored people like this young man could be present, and they had no vote. And white men made all of the decisions. And he said, hearing the story. "You see, that's why we're at this rally. So that one day there will be more than just foxes in the courthouse." And then we marveled at a story. That story comes from African traditions, story of the animals, right? Figuring out stuff, rabbit stories, survived when people were taken as captive or traveled. Let's just take that story as captive, right? And what can they bring? Nothing but their songs, their stories, their way of knowing and seeing the world and making sense out of that experience. And those stories survived the journey and were shared from generation to generation to generation. So not even just Black folks know the stories of the animals in this culture. Black, white, Asian, Latino are probably by now all learning the stories of Brer Rabbit. Many people say Brer Rabbit. Those came from Africa, survived here, shared by so many. And then I could bring the story back home. And it made sense. It spoke to that moment. That was when I really began to understand the power of stories, the power and the importance of stories to make bridges across time, to make connections in community, to make bridges across cultures. Powerful, powerful, powerful stuff. So ever since then, I have been doing that. 20-some years as a full-time professional storyteller. So I love to tell stories. I love it, I love it, I love it. But I also love to encourage and what's the word I want to use? Oh, let's just say encourage people to find and share their stories too. So we're going to spend a little time doing that, unless anybody has some questions or comments or anything first. No.
So you still have a little piece of Langston Hughes?
I can't find my little piece of Langston, which is very tragic. In my move, I still have the little rabbit that he came in for me. And Ramona Bass, who's his widow, George passed away. So she's still around, and she said, oh, I think I could get you some more Langston. Because now Langston is interred in the Schomburg Center in New York City, the Schomburg Center for Black Culture and Research. So when they built that, they built this beautiful, and I don't know if it's an atrium, but it's a big space. And it has one of Langston's poems, I've Known Rivers. And it's in the tile of the floor, and there are all these beautiful rivers. And right in the center of this like sun-ish thing, below there is where they buried Langston. Yeah. So there's a little dust in that thing. I don't know if it's really Langston or not. But I have the story.
Right.
And every time I tell it, I'm reminded that I was made goddaughter to Langston by my mentor, by my crazy, kooky professor who impacted my life in incredible ways. Incredible, incredible ways. My kooky professor. Maybe some of you have had one of those. So, yeah. Any other thoughts or questions or come on in. Are you going to join us? Because we're getting ready to come on in. Perfect. Yeah, that's waiting just for you. All right, let's do a little time check. How are we doing?
It's 20 of 5.
Okay, perfect-ish. Yeah, that's fine. How many storytellers in the room?
Not officially.
Okay, not officially, so my next question will perhaps help us all think about that. How many of us have ever shared a story about a trip we took, an adventure we had, an argument we had with a parent, sibling, friend, neighbor, a movie we saw, a book we read, an unbelievable experience? You won't believe what happened just the other day. A gift you received. Anybody ever do anything at all like that before? Mm-hmm. Okay, so how many storytellers in the room? Exactly. All of us, every single one of us has stories that we live and that we tell. Now, oftentimes we tell stories, well, who do you share your stories with? Usually. Oh my God, you won't believe what happened to me the other day. Who gets to hear that story? Friends, absolutely. Right? Friends is where we tell stories. Where else? Family, absolutely, absolutely. Any other places?
The workplace.
The workplace. Can you believe what so-and-so did? Ay, 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 ay. The workplace. Okay. Yeah. Right. Right. We do it all of the time. So we just had a couple of mentions. Somebody said family, somebody said friends, somebody said the workplace. So I'd like you to think for a moment. Just kind of go, I often will say, go through the Rolodex of your memories. But if you don't, and I don't really see pictures. I was thinking about this the other day. It's not like I really see pictures, but I might go through the Rolodex, and even if I don't see initially a clear picture, somebody's name or, you know, the thought of somebody will pop up in my head. So that's another way that works just fine. If you're like, oh my God, I don't see any pictures in my mind, so what? If somebody jumps in your head, that would be useful. Okay, so go through your memory bank, your Rolodex.
I'm just wondering, do students here know what a Rolodex is?
Oh, thank you, photo album, thank you. Or your digital, yeah, right, your digital photo album. How about that?
Contact list.
Your contact list, yeah, your digital photo album, your contact list, what else? Anything, but you get the idea? Okay.
Friends on Facebook.
Yeah, your Facebook page, yeah, your Facebook friends. Good idea. Oh, thank you. Ay, ay, ay. Ooh. Whenever I don't feel that old, then I'm reminded that I've been on the planet longer than, some people. So go through your contact list. Go through your digital photo album, your Facebook albums, whatever, and see who jumps out as a storyteller in your life. From your family, from your work, from your neighborhood, from your, might be somebody you know now, might be somebody from a long time ago, right? Might be, who knows, might be a professor. Certainly George was a storyteller for me. Everybody get somebody jump in? Okay, so now what I'd like you to do is just give yourself some time, and again, I say words imagistically, but I don't necessarily see pictures. So you might see pictures or you just might get words, but I want you to visualize or imagine this person. What did this person look like? What's their hair like? What's their skin like? What about their hands? Kinds of clothes this person wore or wears? And where do you encounter this person? Where do you get to hear this person's stories? Is it on a special occasion? Is it at a certain time of year? Is there a certain place that you get to hear this person tell stories? And what kind of stories does this person share? And what kind of voice does this person use to share the stories? And who else is there? Is it just you, or what other people are around when this person is sharing stories and you get to experience it? What kinds of stories, and what's the feeling in that experience for you and for the others? And thinking about that person right now, what does that feel like for you? I'm going to ask you to turn to a neighbor and just share everything that you remembered in that exercise or that activity. Just introduce yourself to whoever's next to you if you don't know that person yet. And introduce that person to the storyteller that you just remembered. Okay, so you have a couple minutes to take turns and share a little bit.
She has like anything about But like, is she like famous or
I know.
She ran the
It wasn't just her, right? And I guess I should follow you.
that's great.
And I kind of like
she's written a bunch of books.
Fascinated. Like, what is he gonna learn today? What is today? We're all fascinated. I think that's
And obviously, like, yeah, and like how they go through. I didn't even really hear about how she's I like to read. So when I don't like to read novels. If I want to see something, I'll go past it. Yeah, so I just read one of his books. That's really nice, like to read more books about novels. Like I'm a big fan of Nickelodeon. I know that's like girlish and everything, but I love yeah.
Okay, take another 30 seconds. Hopefully your second person has had a chance, is on the second person.
Are you excited? I am excited. And what are your plans? Do you have like plans? I want to be a midwife. Yeah. So, I kept I didn't any like stories last year. So I need to but what do you want to do? I don't know. Actually, this writer, she is like kind of my inspiration of like from my what you could feel like so that's very interesting.
Okay, did everybody get a chance to share a bit? Yeah? Yeah? Who did you remember? What kinds of people did you remember? Oh, Lord, just went from blah, 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 to that's just normal. It's all right. Who'd you remember? Family, friends, what?
I remembered our associate minister at church, Sharon Keith.
I do, yeah.
I think of her as telling stories. Well, I'm used to those traditional sermon kinds of things, but she's always, even in that, telling stories of her work and the people she knows. And growing up in Texas, and her father, who was the doctor, but in the poor community where they pay him in whatever they could pay him with. He took care of a lot of Mexican undocumented workers in that community, and she tells stories about her prison ministries and
Nice.
things that she learned. So I think of her as a storyteller.
Yeah.
And that's how she kind of, more than her sermons, it's sort of the stories that she tells.
Great.
That come from her life.
Great, great. So, minister. What else? Who else? Who other kinds of people?
I shared that a storyteller who kind of recently entered my life is a woman who has written a couple of books, and she's kind of at the forefront of third wave feminist activism. And I did a camp called Feminist Boot Camp with her in January. And so I've seen her once since at a conference and kind of stayed connected with her. And she uses storytelling to tell stories of her own personal experiences to bring people together and use it as a form of activism to create change.
Great.
So, yeah, she's become an important person to me.
Very cool. Good. Any other kinds of people? Friends? Did anybody say friends? Friends?
Friends.
From long ago or contemporary friends?
From long ago, but continued.
Nice. Very nice. Did anybody say family members? Yeah? What kind of family members?
Parents, mom.
Mom, nice. Grandmother, yeah. Others? So authors, inspiration, parents, grandparents, friends, ministers. Okay, so the feelings that you had when you were remembering, what was that like? When you were invited to think about these folks. What was that like? When you got a few minutes to just kind of sit back and remember. How did that make you feel?
Well, it made me smile a little bit as I started to think of some of them.
Yeah. Can make you feel good, right? Because you're remembering somebody who, is funny, tells great stories, or is inspiring, or crazy. Like, what in the world is that professor going to say today? I was eavesdropping. Not on everything, but I did hear some things. Right? So it can make us feel good, right? It can make us feel proud or inspired or connected, right? However that is. Powerful. How did it feel then to share a bit of that with somebody who maybe you don't know that well? I don't know how well you guys all know each other. I was just sort of jumping you right on in. So how did it feel to then talk about this person to somebody else?
Well, we know each other from working together, so it felt very comfortable.
Okay. Right, when you know people, it feels comfortable. How does it feel when it's somebody you don't know? What happened? As the teller or as the listener, what happened?
It's a little trickier. When you want to compare the person with this injustice to how great or how important they are to you.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find the words and the expression to put that all together doesn't come quickly, I guess.
Okay.
So,
Might not.
I don't know who it is, I guess.
Okay. Might not come too quickly. Okay. What else?
I felt good to do it. I mean, I feel very proud that I could share about this friend of mine. But I would say at the same time, I just thought, I wish I could have a recording of her voice and say, this is me. Can you hear what I'm talking about?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, just be able to convey that fully. I think that's a little bit challenging, but and my friend has been recorded, so I actually could say, hey, you should
Yeah. Cool. Any other thoughts or responses? So there's a responsibility, right? When we are sharing stories in this, what I'm hearing is, there's a bit, on some level, a bit of responsibility, and I want to do it justly, right? That can paralyze us, right? That can silence us if we don't practice more. If we don't practice or have the opportunity to do that so that we feel more comfortable, trusting that, knowing that. There's in Liberia, there's a saying that no one is dead unless he or she is forgotten. And it comes from this wonderful folk tale about these children who go out and search for their father who's been missing for a long time, and they find his bones and they bring him back to life. And he makes this beautiful gift of a cow's tail. And he gives it to the youngest child because the youngest child was the one who said, "Where's my father? Where's my dad?" And that's what sent everybody out to look for him. So we honor people whenever potentially we honor people when we tell their stories, right? Potentially we honor them. What did it feel like for you as listeners to hear a bit about the other person's storyteller, to hear them share? What was that like for you as the listener?
It's
really nice to hear someone talk about someone that they really care about.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
It's a window into the person who's telling the story about the storyteller. And
Yeah.
what it is about the storyteller.
That's right. That's right. That's right. The window in. Yep. To the teller, to the other person. That's right. And how does that feel as the listener?
I think you feel like maybe you learned a little something that you didn't know
Mm-hmm.
before. That was,
Yeah.
Kind of and being entrusted,
Mm.
entrusted with something, sort of this holding. And I especially think when the stories are really hard stories.
Yeah.
That they would trust you enough to share it. It's really important.
Yeah. So part of what happens around storytelling, at least as far as I think, is that, you know, half of storytelling is listening. Half of storytelling is listening. So when we are setting up or, you know, trying to find ways for people to share what's your story, we need to understand that even if people don't articulate it, some of it is it safe for me to tell this? Is it safe for me to share? What is safe for me to share? You know, and with your friends, it's like fun, and you do blah, 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 blah. And there's certain friends, we all have certain friends that you're not going to tell certain stories to, isn't that right? Like we know, okay, this person we can go there with, and this person, the line is here. This person can hear everything, or the deep stuff, or the scary stuff, or the vulnerable stuff. But that is important to know, and that's because story is that deep. It is who we are. It is our bones, it's our blood, it's our sinews, it's our breath. So we get to decide which part we're sharing with somebody else, right? And we don't do this consciously. I do it consciously because it's my work. You know, but for the most part, we're not necessarily doing it consciously. But if we look at the movement, not specifically about storytelling, I wonder, and I don't really know because I'm sort of in this place of exploration, you know, even storytelling isn't necessarily sexy, but if you said open mic story slam, or hey, we're going to have the Moth here at Peace. Do you guys heard of the Moth? Or there are places on campuses where people will do come tell the story about your life. You have 5 minutes. Is there any of that kind of thing happening? It's the same thing. It just has a different wrapping around it, and I don't necessarily know that there's an understanding of sort of, you know, where this is coming from. It's coming from the fact that we want to share our story. We want to know. We want to be known, right? We want to be known, and we want to know one another. That's where that all comes from. But it has to feel safe, whatever that means. Oh, comedy club, good, these are funny stories. Oh, these are the sacred stories. Oh, these are the women's stories. Oh, these are the, oh, how am I going to find a mate stories, or, you know, whatever it is. You know, you can pick sort of any topic. So just along those lines, any thoughts, comments, observations? Because I want us to do one more. How much time do we have?
It's 5 o'clock.
Oh, gosh, can we do one more?
Yep.
Little?
I'll
Okay, thank you for
No
coming.
problem.
Yeah, happy storytelling. Thank you for
Thank
coming.
you.
All right, because I did want us to do just one more little similar thing. And part of it is, you know, like I said, we have to practice. So we have to have permission to mine our experiences and have a place for us to share them. Right? If we're not practicing that, we don't feel very comfortable doing it. So for our I'll give you a choice. All right? Whichever jumps in your head first, you get to choose how you want to respond. As I invite, and you'll notice that I asked you a lot of questions when I gave you the topic before. And that's because we want to get to story. And story has details. right? So I could simply say, oh, tell me about a storyteller in your life. You could go, oh, my grandmother, oh, my mother, oh, my blah, 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 which is cool, but I want to know more, right? We want to get a sense of who that person really is. So what's the voice like? What's the setting like? How do they do it? And how do you get, is it at the table? All those things, right? So that's why I'm asking you those questions. Our writers do this, right? Who, what, when, where, why, how, blah, blah. So we're going to do this, and you're going to pick, and then we'll kind of go through this thing together. It might take us about 5 minutes. So here's your choice. Crazy relative or precious gift. Crazy relative or precious gift. Or maybe you mix them up in some kind of way. I don't know. You pick whatever pops into your head around those words that I just said. Crazy relative, precious gift. Whichever one you picked, focus in on it. All right? And give yourself a few, we're just going to go through this. What is it? What does it look like? Where is it? How do you encounter it? If it's a relative, when, where, who's there? What does this relative look like? If it's a gift, how did you receive it? Who gave it to you? What's important to you about this person or this object? Why is it important to you? Where is it now? Okay. Get a partner. You're going to have about 30 seconds to share. Now, I'll give you a minute. Who needs one? Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, you guys go. Good, 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 good. So we'll give you a minute.
I think it's a crazy relative, but
All
in a
right.
great way.
Go for it.
Always joking around, whether it's calls me or usually at family functions, so always have jokes or something to say. Always makes everyone laugh. So that's
Yes. She's like a rebel. She goes against all the rules.
Yeah, he does. In a good way.
She goes out a lot more than me.
Playful.
She's like my soulmate. She understands me. Like, I don't have to say things, and I know she understands.
Absolutely.
So it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't really know.
All the
Like,
time.
when I
Yeah.
have a crazy relative,
Yeah, he
I
does.
have one relative who's so crazy, but it's like positive.
He's my dad's brother. He's a couple years older
So
than
I'm
me.
trying to think of the gift, but I don't really think of
Or
it.
no, I
But
think he's 2 years
I
younger.
just turned 21, and my parents.
Switch if you didn't switch yet.
My parents.
You might not have finished, and that's okay.
So like that was important, or it is important. And it's like important because they do so like a way to remember it. Then we remember my birthday. So
That's really nice.
yeah, yeah. And my parents are like really important people to me. So the locket is kind of like way that like I remember that, and you know.
And then had the meeting.
Yeah.
And how long ago did you turn 21?
I'm from New York, so they knew us like we went out and had breakfast. It was nice time. It was a good birthday.
And did you go out like to celebrate?
Yeah, but everything went well.
No.
Okay, time. keeping with your theme, whichever one you picked, I want you just to take a couple of moments, and I want you to just go back to either that. Did anybody do an object, or did you all do relatives? A couple people did objects. Okay, great. And some people did relatives. So think again about what you didn't have a chance to say to your partner. And also, as you're thinking about either your person or your object, think about the senses around it. All right? If you didn't have a chance to think about the 5 senses, what does it feel like? What does it smell like? What does it sound like? I don't know if there's taste. Taste, what's the other one?
Sight.
Sight, thank you. God. Duh. All right? So go back to your person or your object and just spend some time going through those details of those around the senses. Sight and sound and smell and touch and taste. Thank you. All right, so just take 30 seconds and think around that. Now I'm going to ask you to take another 30 seconds and see if you can frame this memory with an opening. Like, how do you want to start telling somebody about this person or this thing? What's the beginning? What's the first sentence you want to say? And what's the last thing you want to say? So take 30 seconds and see if you can think about the first way to start sharing this bit of memory from your life. First sentence, last sentence. Okay, time's up. And find another partner. And you're each going to have 1 minute to tell your story or share your memory. 1 minute, okay? So just find somebody else to talk to. Somebody on the end is going to have to move, I know. I know, I just thought it would make it a little easier because you're probably going, they already heard my story and they don't want to hear it again. So you have 1 minute. Each. 1 minute each. So decide who's going first and go for it.
Uncle Jack walks through the door on Thanksgiving Day and ended as everyone's about to have it. Right up at the book.
I also sounds like crazy relatives, but I'm not they're actually you keep my sister.
But it's normally like
you see me and you see her.
important things.
Only her tackles are like this,
Yeah.
but we're like high school graduations,
So,
and we speak the same like
they got
about
my
sister.
Switch if you haven't. I know. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
That's cool. That's the same age.
No, she's a senior in high school.
Yeah. Awesome.
But she's like rebel. My parents don't want to. But not in like a bad way, but like in a high school.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool.
And like she's applying for college right now.
Yeah.
You guys done?
How is the photo contest?
And time.
One of my team members
Okay.
later on.
How was that? Hard. Did anybody finish?
As much as we wanted.
You did. Good job. Good job. You know, here I'm telling you to do a minute. I don't even have my watch on. So, all right. But this is the last part. Now, see, this is if we had all the time in the world, then we could each then have 2 minutes to actually tell our story. A minute's not a very. I mean, it's not very long, but it's long enough if you are given the opportunity to sort of think through what you're going to talk about. So last thing, think about your story. Should we do 6 words? Let's do 6 words. In 6 words. Now you may want to think about, sometimes I do it in 3 words, but let's do it in 6. Okay, so whatever it is that you just remembered, and one way to think about this is to think about a beginning, a middle, and an end. I asked you before to think about a beginning sentence for your story and an end sentence. I asked you to think about who, what, when, where, why, and how. I asked you to think about the senses. You've been remembering things. So if you were going to then tell that little bit, that huge bit that's flooding in 6 words, how would you do it? Do you have 2 for the beginning, 2 for the middle, 2 for the end? I don't know. I don't know. You can think of it however it is that you want, but that captures that story. Anybody ready? You are? All right, let's hear it. Cool. Who's going first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
My grandfather's watch is my precious gift.
Very nice. Very nice. My grandfather's watch is my precious.
Wait, oh no, I didn't do it.
So how do you edit it?
Okay. This watch reminds me of Grandpa.
This watch reminds me of Grandpa. Sure. Okay. Cool. Or grandfather's watch. Anyway, yeah. Great, but we get it, right? Nice. What else? Who's got one? Adopted daughter, ceramic heart, precious gift. Nice. Who else?
Finding the golden mustard seed.
Finding the golden mustard.
My favorite.
Oh, you even get to have one more. Right?
Going to find.
Going to find the golden
mustard. Oh, that's 2 words. Searching. We finding the gold.
We found what?
Where we
Are you looking now? We are
finding
the
golden.
We are
finding. Going to find the mustard.
Going to find the mustard seed.
Yes.
Going to find the mustard seed. Yeah, there you go. Great. Good. Who else?
My uncle makes everyone leave happy.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. We get a sense, don't we? We get a sense. Thank you. Makes everyone leave happy. Yeah, great. Cool. What you got?
I only got 2 words.
What you got?
3. My sister is my soulmate.
My sister is my soulmate. It could work, right? Soulmate could be. We could make soulmate 2 words. Little, or you could say big. Little sister. What?
Little.
My little sister is my soulmate. Oh, that's nice. Who else? What you got?
I don't know.
We'll help.
My parents are the most important.
My parents are the most important. There you go. Cool. Who else? Did you do it? Yes. Oh, we want to know.
Hate birds, but love this necklace.
Hate birds, but love this necklace. Okay, nice. How about you?
I'm working on it.
She is over there. She's
Okay,
like,
yeah.
"Blah, blah, blah, blah."
I'd say Dad's necklace reminds me of him.
Oh, very nice. There you go. Cool. Did you guys do it?
I do.
You come on.
It's a hard one. Dying mom finds faith, hope abounds. My mom died a year ago. That's actually why I'm
Here.
close again.
Okay. Yeah. Dying mom finds faith, hope abounds. Yeah, great. Thank you. Did you do it?
I did.
Oh, goody.
Well, I kind of had it from before, but lots of people with good intentions.
Lots of people with good intentions. Okay, excellent. Makes me want to know way more that's behind those stories, I gotta say. Cool. Thank you guys so much for sharing your stories with each other. And the little 6 words with me, and it's been my pleasure to see you this afternoon. So why don't we just finish with the song? Da-ku-o-na, 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 mo-ni, da-ku-o-na, 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 mo-ni. All right, happy storytelling. Have a little nosh before you go. And thank you for hanging out for a while this afternoon.